All right. Our group, the affirmative, is being asked to argue the fact that unrestricted access to all forms of birth control is a fundamental human right. Before we start delving into our arguments, we would like to dictate a few definitions for you. The first one that we would like to define is the word unrestricted, which we took to mean freely available for use or participation by all. The second one that we would like to define is fundamental, which we took to mean foundational, a bottom line component, vital point. Without this item, nothing constructive can be built, a core or key aspect of something larger. And we took these from Black's Law Dictionary. The third one that I'd like to define is human rights, which we also took from the United Nations article of human rights. So let's just put that out there, you know.
Sorry.
What he said. That's fine, that's completely fine, as long as we don't like freak out about it for the whole time. So the recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. The last one that we would like to define is birth control, which we will define as the restriction of the number of offspring by means of contraceptive measures, as well as projects, programs, or methods to control reproduction by either improving or diminishing fertility. And we took that from metalexical.com, which is a variation of a medical publication. Now we realize that for some, the topic of birth control is a touchy one. On many levels, the practice has been given a much more negative connotation than it actually deserves. The use of birth control in its various forms fulfills many needs for men and women in modern society. One of the most widely felt effects of unrestricted birth control access is the, it would continue to be, is the astronomical increase of the bodily autonomy of American women. We will continue within this debate the argument that we have made before, that an individual's bodily autonomy is perhaps the most inalienable of human rights, and that since unrestricted access to birth control is one of the most effective fulfillments of that right, it is in itself an inherently fundamental human right. This argument is one that has been through an additive process. This has been a lengthy development in the realization of a long denied human right. Why would society as a whole work for so long to establish such rights for women if they are inherently wrong? These rights have been continuously built upon and supported, despite many of the religious and allegedly moral obligations that the negative will likely bring up tonight. What developments may have come about in the last 5 to 10 years that would be valid or universally applicable enough to overturn years of progress? Humans have been using birth control for thousands of years. No one felt the need to impede in the reproductive health practices of United States citizens until 1873, with the introduction and passing of the Comstock Bill, which implemented a federal ban on all forms of birth control by an all-male legislative body. This bill was law until it and the federal ban were repealed in 1938. In the 1960s and 70s, the new development of oral and hormonal forms of birth control helped to revolutionize the FDA regulation and drug packaging practices. Throughout the 80s and 90s, birth control became less invasive and in lower dosages, which for the first time enabled birth control to be taken at a more convenient and personally dictated schedule. No longer were lengthy, invasive, or frequent doctor's visits needed, nor prescriptions that needed constant renewal. Within the last 10 to 15 years, forms of long-term birth control have been developed, as well as forms of emergency contraception. In 2013, some forms of emergency contraception were approved for over-the-counter use, enabling women a method of pregnancy prevention that was and is effective after the act of sex, but before the implantation of an embryo within a woman's reproductive organs. Something many people don't realize is that many forms of birth control are also used for other women's health issues. The most common alternative use for hormonal birth control products are in relation to the female menstrual cycle. These medications are used to regulate this cycle, providing regularity, reducing severe pain in relation to the cycle, and the length and amount of bleeding or blood loss during the cycle. These uses have greatly benefited women in the workplace and in education, since it limits or ends the need for these women to miss days of work or school because of these medical issues. It also helps with the elevated costs that these women often subsume. Women with excessively heavy menstrual cycles on average make $1,700 a year less than women with non-heavy menstrual cycles because of the medical costs involved and the time away from work. There is no apparent legal basis for restricting men's health, and so if women and men should be considered as equal in the eyes of the law, there should be no legal basis for restriction in women's health. Yet between January and August of 2014, there were a total of 468 separate bills introduced at both the state and federal levels of government in regards to the restriction of women's reproductive rights. Bills introduced in regards to men's health were numbered at a grand total of 0. That's our argument. We're arguing that the unrestricted access to all forms of birth control is a fundamental human right, and we will get back to the second instructor.
All right. Questions?
This is the extra stuff. Telling her she's been killing saplings all day. Murdering trees.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Yeah, time for questions. All right, go Lizzie.
So what's bodily autonomy?
It's basically you have the right to your own body, and that really no one else can tell you what to do with it. Your bodily autonomy can go as something as simple as, you know, you can paint your fingernails whatever color, you can dye your hair whatever color, or you put on clothes in your body. Too simple saying of no, like, for example, the United States cannot take your organs or blood or tissue sample because that is infringing on your bodily autonomy. They can't do that even if you're dead. So basically, you have the right to your own body. No one else can take that away from you. But,
So where did you get that information?
well, we got it from the Oxford English Dictionary originally.
We'll let you slide.
Specifically told not to mention that.
So that is not valid at all, because obviously unless you did not follow instructions, then that means if you're a doctor, so qualified, then that just bodily autonomy is what?
Well, it's actually kind of in.
What I can do with my body?
It's what you can, it's actually a right, though. It's recognized as a right in the United States.
Gotcha.
By the Constitution and stuff.
Sounds good. Says Jayla and Carly.
And state laws, but okay.
Okay, we're
All right.
moving on from this.
Okay.
Question for you.
Oh, hold on, I have a question. It will be bad.
Okay, as long as it's not bad.
I was just kind of wanting to get, sorry. I just wanted to get, your definition again, I miss it on birth control.
Birth control. Actually, I will even hand this to you so you can read it.
Okay, I just want to write it down.
Well, you can copy it from there as I read it to you. Birth control, we said, was the restriction of the number of offspring by means of contraceptive practice measures, as well as the projects, programs, or methods to control reproduction by either improving or diminishing fertility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then one last question.
Please.
When you, this is normal.
You were telling me
When you, your very last point,
Yeah.
I missed the date, what you said when there was no
2014?
restrictions. No restrictions passed for men, and I didn't catch the number.
468.
Okay. Restrictions for women?
460 for women,
460.
0 for men, and that
It's
was from
2014 from January to August, and that is from the Gudenmarsch Institute. Written in
Awesome.
August 2014.
I heard, I wrote it down. Okay, so the resolution again is that unrestricted access to all forms of birth control is a fundamental human right. And then, I am gonna accept your definition for human rights and birth control. I'm just gonna add a little bit to unrestricted, for us meant not limited or controlled by rules or laws. And then we also had the word all, which by the legal dictionary by Barlett's means completeness, entireness, entirety, everything, fullness, etc. And then for fundamental from the Macmillan dictionary, for us meant essential to the existence, development, or success of something. And there is an example for fundamental to. So for example, my relationship with the actors is fundamental to my work as a director. And as the negative, our decision rule is we're gonna win if we can prove that birth control is not fundamental and that it is not a human right. So our 3 main points, the first one is gonna be unrestricted access opposes fundamental law of self-preservation. And then number 2, the right is not fundamental for all humans. And for the third one, according to fundamental law, some birth control must be restricted. So what is birth control? From Medical News Today, published September 2nd, 2009, the 3 main routes of birth control to prevent or end pregnancy include contraception, which is the prevention of fertilization of the ovum by sperm cells, contraception, which is going to be the emergency contraception like the morning after pill, and then the chemical or surgical induction of abortion of the developing embryo or fetus. So what do we as a negative think about birth control? Well, we're not here to argue against it because we obviously realize that it is useful in certain situations. So why do some need to be restricted and others not? Why are some over the counter and the other ones not? Why will some doctors restrict you from certain forms of birth control? So the ones that aren't constricted or restricted right now, that you don't need doctor's permission for, are going to be the over-the-counter ones like the sponge, spermicide, if you choose to abstain from sex, male and female condoms, foreplay, morning after pill, and then the ones that do need doctors' advice and professional opinion would be the vasectomy, tying your tubes, the implant, the shot, the IUD, pills, and the patch. And then the reasons why we believe that these need to be restricted is because they need the medical professional opinion to advise on how to go about taking these because every person's body reacts differently. For example, from health.com for the implant, it doesn't actually really work for people who are considered overweight. So if that were to become over the counter and someone who was overweight took the implant and didn't know those side effects, they like 9 months later might just have a baby. even though they thought they were being smart and protected. And then the patch is a form that delivers 60% more estrogen than a low-dose pill like orthotricycline low for the hormonal birth controls. And that is going to actually increase your risk for blood clots. So if you don't already know your medical history, and if you're prone to blood clots, if you decide you think the patch is best for you and you don't have that doctor's advice, you could die of a blood clot, unfortunately. So those are the types that would be harmful for you if they were not restricted because you need the doctor's recommendation. So in order for you to claim that you need unrestricted access to all of these forms on the basis of it's my human right, you would need to prove how each individual birth control method is fundamental to you as a human being. So the point one, which is opposes the fundamental law of self-preservation, this Washington State University article, The Biological Basis of Human Behavior by Dr. Richard S. Taplinger, says, self-preservation is keeping yourself alive, either physically or psychologically. The latter includes mentally or economically healthy, since human beings are very social creatures. We may also apply self-preservation to other people, such as our families. Humans are subject to the same stimuli and reactions as any other animal. Hunger, thirst, asphyxiation, fear, and exhaustion are physical sensations that cause instinctive physical reactions. Most of these reactions are unpleasant, and people avoid the stimuli that cause them. Or, if they're unavoidable, take actions to reduce them. Thus, you eat when hungry, drink when thirsty, fight for air, run from dangerous situations, and sleep. In any case, the reactions are good in that they tell you you're in a situation that could result in injury or death. These responses are instinctive, and we have no more control over them than we do over our eye color. Actually, we do have control over our eye color. The reason we do is why our approach to self-preservation is going to be different from other creatures. We have a brain that is capable of perceiving and solving problems. We can change our eye color with those contact lenses that are different colors, and we react to a threatening situation through applying our brains to the problem and finding a solution to it. So what I'm trying to say is that we need guidance and counsel from professional people who specialize and have studied birth control and their effects to protect our own well-being, our self-preservation. This is common sense, and it's the status quo. And so number two, our point number two is this right is not fundamental for all humans. So remember the definitions. What is a human right? Who do human rights belong to? We are all equally entitled to our human rights without discrimination. These rights are all interrelated, interdependent, and indivisible. Universal human rights are often expressed and guaranteed by law in the forms of treaties, customary international law, general principles, and other sources of international law. Human rights are the rights inherent to all human beings, whatever our nationality, place of residence, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status. So examples, right to life, right to an education, and right to freedom of expression. So again, what does fundamental mean? Something essential to the existence, development, or success of something. So I'm actually really going to ask you guys for a show of hands, so if you could interact with this to these questions. So, is birth control essential to your existence? Is it foundational to your development in life? Is birth control fundamental for your success in your walk? Is it fundamental for all humans? Now, none of you raised your hand, so that helps out. Right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna leave point 3 to him. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so for your definition of fundamental, would you say that's more a moral standpoint or a lawful standpoint?
No, we were just kind of adding on to your definition. We agree with your definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, which was,
Would you agree that's more of a lawful standpoint than a moral standpoint?
Yeah, the
It's
question
Would
is
be a
also-
yes.
more of a lawful standpoint
Yeah.
than a moral standpoint.
Because we're arguing that human rights is a lawful right. We're not arguing that's a moral right because we understand that it's a touchy issue and some people might put their morals, but we recognize that, but it's still a lawful. So that's why I want to make sure that your definition for fundamental is under the lawful.
Yes. Since we seek the absolute truth, we agree that we need to use the lawful definition and also the moral definition to get to the complete truth.
I'm not really sure how to respond to that.
I was thinking about, what, you were talking about the different ways that some of these rights are enforced. Can you repeat those?
What? Sorry.
So that, the ways that rights are enforced, for instance, different different government, like international government entities that you were talking about near the end.
Oh, yeah, then, okay. So, the one that is guaranteed by law in the forms of treaties, customary, you want me to read that or? Okay. So universal human rights are often expressed and guaranteed by law in the form of treaties, customary international law, general principles, and other sources of international law. International human rights law lays down obligations of governments to act in certain ways or to refrain from certain acts in order to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms of individuals or groups.
So then would you argue that only the rights that are enforced by these governments are fundamental human rights? So if it's something that a government hasn't ratified, it could still be a human right, so even if it's not enforced, it could still be a human right.
I'm sorry, what was the first question?
Even if a government isn't, because you said, you agreed with me when I said that only is it true that only the enforced human rights by these governments, those are the only true human rights?
What do you mean by enforced?
Well, enforced by those types of organizations and bodies.
No,
Okay.
no.
Alright, no, it's normal then. Do you have any questions?
No.
All right.
Can I take some time?
For sure.
Like a minute and a half time? Just enough time for you to fill out that couple. Anybody else need a bathroom break right
Like that, no shame.
It's only been 20 minutes since your last break.
I don't, so she should honestly do whatever she wants to do.
You don't know
I
how
mean-
much liquor she drank after
I'm just pointing it out. I'm just pointing it out. It's all right.
Well, do you want to wait until they're done?
I mean,
Otherwise they're gonna-
is it gonna count as my prep time if I'm just waiting for them?
You've only used 40 seconds so far. I mean, how about you just take a couple more seconds and get yourself figured out? If you guys are that close to use, I think maybe no teams so far have used all of their prep time. Not one of.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna worry about it too much. If you start overlapping, then we'll come back and revisit this situation, but let's bracket the question for now.
I got it. Don't worry.
I got it.
Yeah, I will.
Because you don't remember next.
Yeah, don't worry about it. That's fine. Okay. And you got this?
And do the thing like this. Great.
I'm gonna wait for Alicia to get in here.
Okay, we'll give her a couple more seconds for that one.
Interrupted.
let's just all like shake our.
We can do like the live thing and just clap.
Good dance.
I'm just really tired right now and I have like a whole paper to write after I get off here, so I'm like.
Can't tell.
Huh?
Okay.
Hey, she's back, okay.
All right.
Alright, now the party can begin.
Okay. Ready,
All right.
Jim?
I am. Take it away.
Okay, so I'm gonna first go over the negative rebuttal and then I'm gonna go after and rebuild my own case. Basically, all we have to do to win this debate is prove that access to all forms of birth control is a fundamental human right. And we are going by the lawful definition of fundamental, as I explained in the cross X, because birth control, especially they're gonna talk about abortion, is a very like morally divided issue, and so that's why we wanna focus on more of the lawful, just because if you start focusing too much on moral, it can get into some really, really murky ground, and we don't wanna focus on that in this debate. We wanna make it clear and concise for everyone. Okay, so they first talk about the different types of birth control, such as vasectomy, getting your tubes tied, implant, IUD, and they talk about how, you know, pill and such as patch can cause blood clots, and so that way you need to go talk to a doctor in order to get these. I'm not saying this is not a bad idea, like I've personally had a friend who's gotten a blood clot from using birth control. I'm saying that these women should have the right to go and talk to the doctor and not have a problem receiving these birth controls, which actually it's, like we said in our first restriction, is that there's been 480 restrictions in half a year, that was in 2014, for regulating women's reproductive rights. And one of those things is that they're actually defunding places like Planned Parenthood, which many low-income women need to go in order to get a doctor to tell them, you know, you can take these IUDs or you can like have these surgeries, because most of them you need to require like vasectomy. I'm pretty sure you can't do by yourself. I'm pretty sure you actually need to go to the hospital and get that done. So with these 486 restrictions, Senator Nina Turner, I love this quote, she declared at a pro-choice rally in 2013, which had 700 bills were provided to be introduced, that this isn't about one bill or about one state, it's about the unrelenting obsession with regulating women's womb. If representatives want to make intimately personal decisions about women's lives and their anatomy, I strongly urge them to go to a medical school, but until then, stay out of a woman's womb. Which recently they have not. Very recently, Planned Parenthood has become under attack for selling baby potty parts, which they really haven't been doing. It got blown out of proportion, but either way, a lot of Republicans have been fighting to defund Planned Parenthood, where many of low-income women actually go, so to get access to birth control. Planned Parenthood serves a disproportionate number of vulnerable patients. According to a new analysis, the group makes about 10% of the nation's publicly funded family planning clinics. It serves 36% of the patients who go to these clinics. In 332 of the countries where Planned Parenthood operates, serves at least half the clients rely on safety net providers such as Medicare, welfare. And this is from a thinkprogress.org research by Tara Cole. Mother Jones actually did an article on Texas after Texas slashed family planning budget by 2/3. It shut down 50 clinics in the state. And this is from the Texas Policy Evaluation Project, so they took the research from this. 300 pregnant women seeking abortion in Texas. They were unable to access birth control they wanted to use in the 3 months before they became pregnant. Among the reasons, cost, lack of insurance, inability to find a clinic, shutting down Planned Parenthood, and inability to get a prescription. Also no access to a doctor. The state's health commission says that Texas will see 24,000 unplanned births by the end of this year, and that will raise state and federal taxpayers' Medicaid costs up to $273 million. So basically, not only are these women not getting access to birth control, but it's actually causing a cost on us. This because According to an article from the Center of Children Families at Brookings, they went through the high cost of unplanned pregnancies. Nearly half of all pregnancies in the United States are unintended. In other words, 1 out of every 2 pregnancies is to a woman who says either that she's not ready to have it or have a or another child, and that she does not want to have a child at all. Unintended pregnancies are particularly concentrated among individuals for whom they are likely to be most disruptive and who are less likely to have the resources needed to deal with the consequences of becoming pregnant unintentionally. Among women who are teenaged, unmarried, or low income, the proportion of pregnancies that are intended exceeds 60%. Unintended pregnancy is also associated with an array of negative outcomes for the women and children involved. For example, relative to women who become pregnant unintentionally, women who experience unintended pregnancies have higher incidence of mental health problems, have less stable romantic relationships, which I'll get back to that later, experience high rate of physical abuse, get back to that later as well, and are more likely to have abortions or delay initial prenatal care. Children whose conception was unintentional are at greater risk than children who are conceived intentionally and of experiencing negative physical and mental health outcomes and are more likely to drop out of high school and engage in delinquent behavior in their teenage years. They found that taxpayers spend about $12 billion annually on publicly funded medical care for women who experience unintended pregnancies and infants who are conceived unintentionally. So basically that shows when we don't allow women to get birth control, it's actually more expensive for us in the long run. And the actually unintended pregnancies are resulting in children that are really unwanted and or unloved or in really negative situations where the parents do love them but they can't take care of them correctly enough. As they said in about the unintended pregnancies, a lot of these women are in like physical or mental abusive situations, which kind of goes back to when they were talking about self-preservation. They say keeping yourself physically and emotionally and mentally okay. Well, according to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or the AMCOG, they found out that reproductive and sexual coercion is actually becoming a huge problem in the United States. They basically define sexual coercion as pregnancy, pressure, or coercion, including threatening to hurt a partner who does not agree to become pregnant, forcing a partner to carry a pregnancy to term against her wishes through acts of violence, forcing a female partner to terminate the pregnancy when she does not want to, or injuring a female partner in a way that might cause a miscarriage. Homicide is a leading cause of pregnancy-associated immorality in the United States. In one study, the major pregnancy-associated homicide were committed by an intimate partner. Sexual coercion excludes a range of behavior that a partner may lead to sexual decision, making a pressure or coerce a person to have sex without using physical force. This behavior includes repeatedly pressuring a person to have sex, threatening to end a relationship if the person does not have sex, forcing sex without a condom, or not allowing other use of birth control, and intentionally exposing a partner to sexually transmitted infections and sometimes HIV, and threatening retaliation of not allowing them to go and get an STI test or an STD test to make sure that they can't get treated. So my question to them is, if there is a self-preservation and making someone personally, physically, emotionally, mentally okay, this is not an area where a person is physically, mentally, emotionally okay. If they are forced to carry a pregnancy to term that they do not want because they were forced to have a pregnancy, or they had a pregnancy and then they're forced to terminate that pregnancy. A recent study shown by Dr. Lindsay Clark in the Women and Infants Hospital in Providence, Rhode Island, and this is actually from the ACOG, Rhode Island, where 641 women who received routine care after they had been threatened or bullied by their partners into getting pregnant, or even had their partners mess with their contraception by hiding pills or poking holes into condoms. 16% said they had that as such abuse. So they emphasize that this is a domestic abuse, and domestic abusers don't want a harmonious or happy life. They actually want to destroy the person that they're with. So it's basically controlling their female partner and controlling their body is what they aim to do the most. In most cases, the abuser sees forced childbirth as a way to tie his victim to him, making it harder to leave, and giving it the desired control. So this is one reason why we say unrestricted access to birth control is a fundamental human right, because these women are not getting their rights. They are not having that bodily autonomy that they need. So in order for them to actually get physically healthy, get sexual health, even though they're in a really negative situation, since many women cannot leave domestic abuse situations that easily because they take care of their, like, they cut them off from their families, their abusers cut them off from their families, cut them off from money, they have really no place to go. So this is one reason, if they can at least get to a Planned Parenthood, get to a doctor, or even get to a, like, CVS to get an STD, like birth control to prevent them from getting pregnant and get them out of the negative situation, that is a human right. That gives them their bodily autonomy, that gives them something they can hold on to. So that's so that's my question again to them. If they are not, that is self-preservation right there, is making sure that they are happy. Is that I'm out of time?
You just ran out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, we had 10 minutes right there.
Okay, thank you.
Question? You said, you gave a quote, you said, I love this quote. It's about regulating women's womb.
Yeah.
Women's womb.
Yeah.
Who said that quote? Sorry, I just.
Hold on. Have to find it in my mess. Papers here first. Okay, Senator Nina Turner, she is from Democratic from Ohio.
Cool. Yeah, give me one. I have time, right?
Yep, you've got time.
Is someone who's paying for all this birth control?
Most of the time I can fact on like all different kinds of birth control, how much they cost, but most of the time it's out of pocket. I know Planned Parenthood, depending on how much income, you can get a discount on certain things, but I know if you have some with Obamacare, or universal healthcare system that was implemented, if you have insurance, most insurance actually covers like a majority of it or all of it. So, I mean, it really depends on the birth control person.
Sure. Do you think that we as humans, men and women, should have to pay for our human rights?
Like, can you elaborate on the question?
Is someone paying you to speak right now?
No.
Is not freedom of speech?
You're paying to speak.
Is not freedom of speech a human right, a fundamental human right?
Well, human.
Freedom of expression, is someone paying you to dress in the clothes that you're wearing right now? Is that someone paying you for your fundamental human right
I
that
don't
you
know if
have
it's a human
as
right.
a person?
I don't know if that's a human right, I think it's a constitutional right, but I'm not sure if it's a human right.
Okay. It's a yes or no question.
Okay. I think it's a constitutional right. I think, I don't know, like, I don't know, I don't have the whole thing of human rights in front of me, so I couldn't tell you what's all underneath them.
No one's paying me to speak right now, but
That's encouraging. Thank you for that.
sounds good.
Uh-oh. He's coming out ready to fight now.
Whatever helps, yeah. Whatever feels good.
What do I get?
12 minutes, 10 minutes?
You have 10, I think.
Okay, great.
10. Lots of time.
Super. Well, I'm gonna take my time. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for joining us. We're not here to say, man, there are so many problems with women and men and babies and, you know, talking about how really there's so many restrictions on just women and not men. Man, like talking about Planned Parenthood and how they were selling body parts and now they're kind of cutting funding because they were doing this moral thing that was supposedly not morally wrong. Well, they just kind of told us we're not talking about morality, we're talking about something lawful. And talking about like, man, these women, it's too costly for them to get some of these birth controls. Lack of insurance or the inability to get access to a doctor. Are not human rights something that is inherent to all human beings? Something that is available to you for just being a person, a man or a woman, not discriminating your race, how old you are, what problems you have, what color your hair is, or if you have cancer or not, you know? I really appreciate the affirmative stance. There are many problems, okay? And birth control is a great thing. It's a wonderful thing, and we need access to birth control. We really do. We need access to birth control. They may even say we need unrestricted access to birth control. But what they're not really getting at is it fundamental? Just because a baby wants candy, are you going to give that baby candy all the time? Is that really fundamental for them? Just because women and men want birth control, is that really a fundamental thing? Like food, water, human rights, like for me to speak, if it's essential to my existence, if it's essential to my development as a person, then that's something that's fundamental for me. The affirmative said fundamental, their legal fundamental deal was, quote, without it, nothing can be built. It's something foundational. So, that's what the affirmative definition is if you didn't write it down. Part of it was, without it, nothing can be built. For fundamental, because we're talking about fundamental human rights. Not just birth control is a human right, it's a fundamental human right. So, are you trying to tell me that if I don't have birth control, nothing I do is legit? Like nothing I'm going to be doing is I'm able to succeed at that. Is that really fundamental? A human right for everyone? For every single person in this room? Is it really fundamental for you, not just women, because they talked a lot about women and their problems, but a human right isn't just including women, it's including dudes and women, transgender, gay, homosexual, Asians, Latinos, whatever. Is it fundamental, a human right, to have birth control? And should it be unrestricted? Maybe it should be unrestricted, but is it fundamental? I don't think so. You're trying to tell me that without birth control, I can't build my life? I can't accomplish my goals? I can't develop what I'm called to do in life? I can't even graduate because I don't have birth control because I'm not a baby? I'm trying to put my woman on birth control, I'm going to threaten her. We're not talking about threats, we're not talking about morality. We're talking about human rights. It said 641 women were asked, and 16% of them said that they were threatened, to go to term, and that's unfortunate. We really do need to find a way to make access to birth control a human right. I believe that. I'll give them that. Everyone should be allowed free birth control. Okay? But is it fundamental? Absolutely not. Seriously? The last debate we had was healthcare is a human right. Plain and simple. This one is a little bit different. It says, could it say healthcare is a fundamental human right? Fundamental is something very different. You don't have a sturdy foundation, you're probably going to fall eventually. And if my foundation is birth control, well, I don't even know, where I'm going. Why we talk about self-preservation? Here's why we talk about self-preservation. Because we want to do everything possible to not hurt ourselves, to not hurt our bodies. Yes, we have bodily autonomy. I can do what I want with my body, okay? In the last debate, if you remember, this is good, they were debating on healthcare is a human right. And healthcare, everything about healthcare is good because it's helping you. It's about your health. But the reason why birth control is a little different is because not all of it is healthy for you. Not all of it is good for your health. Some of it is okay because it's over the counter already. It's already unrestricted. But there are some that needs to be restricted for this fundamental law of self-preservation. There's this one called a cervical cap. Okay, how it works, it prevents your sperm from reaching the egg by covering the cervix. Where do you get it? Your doctor or your healthcare professional needs to find the right fit for you and give you a prescription. There's the sponge. That one you can buy it over the counter. The list goes on and on and on. The point is, not all of it is unrestricted. Maybe all of it should be unrestricted. Okay? But are you trying to tell me that it is a fundamental human right? I don't think so. Thank you.
I just have a few questions. So at first, you were saying at the beginning of your speech, you talked about being non-discriminatory, am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, human rights are not.
Yeah, undiscriminatory. You mentioned a lot of things, but you didn't talk about gender at first. So my question to you is that do you think a lot of these bills that have been proposed to restrict access on women's reproductive health in the United States, or the fact they're shutting down Planned Parenthoods for the sake of abortions when most of them actually that were shut down in Texas weren't even performing abortions, do you think that is discriminatory towards women?
Yes.
Okay, so then why would you, that's cutting off access, so when technically like I falls under the unrestricted access, that we should have more of it, right?
It's because it's not a fundamental human right, and that's why people also have to pay for it. We're not saying that there's no discrimination or there's not unrestricted access. That thing says it is a fundamental human right, and that's not true.
Why would you, okay. So you said, the foundational, that you don't need it to be foundational, birth control is not a foundation of, human rights, am I correct? Was that as well?
I don't believe it's a fundamental human right.
Yeah, but you talked about the foundation of the fundamental, like, is it is it fundamental that everyone's foundation for birth control? I might have misheard or something, I wrote down foundational though.
I was going off your definition. Part of your definition said a fundamental, that word. Without it, nothing can be built. It's foundational.
So, considering historically, there's been pregnancies been in existence for a very, very long time, would you argue, since forever, would you argue that, it's more foundational to human development?
Absolutely. What is?
Birth control. Birth control's been around for a really long time in many, many different civilizations that have flourished. Would you argue that historically it is foundational in our definition of fundamental?
I thought you said as a foundation of human development. That was what you said first.
Yeah, well, foundational for human development.
Okay, by human development, do you mean like reproduction?
I mean, just as a whole, like society's building.
I think that birth control says birth control, which has to do with reproduction. So if it's foundational to preventing reproduction, yes.
Not really, just that reproduction has societal consequences, whether it's a lack of it or a copy of it, so. It does have something to do, reproduction does have something to do with societal development.
I think reproduction in some cases can be bad, too much reproduction, and it can be personally, you know.
And then better to have unrestricted access to forms of birth control.
It may be better to have unrestricted access, you know, I said that. I'm like, you know, that may be true. You might want to make everything unrestricted, okay? But you're trying to tell me that birth control is a fundamental human right. That is not true.
I have to disagree with you, but.
Well, you have to prove it now.
In this situation, you have to disagree with them.
Nope, are you guys done with your questions?
Yep.
Yep, okay, then it would be, yeah, then you can take some prep time if you want, that'd be Lizzie Smith next. Yep.
It's me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we're obviously here to argue that unrestricted access to all forms of birth control is a fundamental human right. And we do agree that you could make it unrestricted, but we're saying not because it's a fundamental human right, just for some other reason you can come up for making it unrestricted. Our three main points were that unrestricted access opposes fundamental law of self-preservation. This right is not fundamental for all humans, and then according to fundamental laws, some birth control must be restricted. So going back to point one, there's the point about having recommendations by a physician. The BBC Ethics on Contraception, there's an article saying that their doctor's primary concern should always be the welfare of a patient, and if they're not, if birth control becomes unrestricted, a lot of it might become over the counter, and there are people out there who don't want to go to a doctor, they're scared to go to a doctor, they don't care, they don't have the time, just many reasons, so they'll just go to the CVS or Walgreens and grab what they can, and that arises consequences. And the reason why we believe that those should be restricted is because of all the good influences that doctors bring. The principle of informed consent between the doctor and the patient requires a doctor to make sure that the patient is aware of and has genuinely understood the hazards and benefits of various methods of contraception, being that each person's body is different. For each method of birth control, the patient needs to know reliability of the method, ease of use of the method, potential side effects, and the health risk. Doctors should explain the methods available and help patients weigh the advantages and disadvantages of the methods so as to make the best choice for the situation. If they're unrestricted, again, they're probably just gonna grab what is closest to them and what they want to. They're not gonna have someone there to tell them all the options and tell them that they could die because they're this or that, or get blood clots or anything. And doctors must make sure that patients are able to use the chosen method properly and can recognize and cope with the side effects. Even myself, I've been on different birth control dosages. It's affected my body because I'm so small and tiny, literally anything does, so I have to be on the low dosage. And I'll agree that there are facts about it helping with like acne or cramps or anything like that. That is a benefit for most women. The doctors provide continuing support for their patients' birth control needs. They outline the emergency contraception options that are available if there is a problem, and where the method is sterilization, the doctor must ensure that the patient is aware that it is unlikely to be reversible. So again, our decision rule was we would win if we prove that birth control is not fundamental and it is not a human right. And I believe that's what we've done. Thank you.
I have some time, correct?
Yep.
Are the audience allowed to ask our participants to restate certain facts?
I'll be happy to do it afterwards. We're probably not allowed to do it.
There's actually an interesting point that you bring up, and it depends on the rule. If different tournaments have different rules in practice, in most competitive debates that use evidence, there is, even if you have an electronic source, it's incumbent upon you to be able to provide a copy of the evidence that can be looked at, at their kind of like touched, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But by both the other team and the judge if requested. But there are other tournaments, and there's some where the judge is not just not allowed, but specifically prohibited from asking to see like copies of evidence or things like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I mean, it depends on the rules of the organization that you're in. But that's an important question. Like, and if you were ever going to cite, like, I want to set up a debate over this topic for my social club or group or class or something like that, that would be a question that you should really like think about. And I hope I'm not interfering too much with Carly's presentation or her prep over there. But if you ever get a chance, you should look. They're easily accessible if you ever Google them online and look at like the rules for presidential debates, and you'll find they run like 40, 50 pages and cover everything from the background to what color lights are going to be used. But they restrict then too on what kinds of materials they can bring into the debates with them and the kind of range of interaction that's allowed. So yeah, if you were to go and judge like a high school or college debate round that used evidence, most of the time as a judge you could say, usually after the round, hey, that piece of evidence that you read or that quotation that you read, could you show me a copy of that?
Oh.
And in most of them, that's totally permissible, but it does vary depending on the rules of your organization.
Okay.
Yep. This. My second to last debate when I was in high school, and I remember it was my second to last. I asked a student, he said, our evidence is, he just came up and he gave a great speech and just absolutely devastated my arguments by referring to his evidence and the original evidence. And it's like, can you